Good morning, everybody. Boy, it's about 3 days into the spring, and I'm on one of my favorite tributaries that flows into Lake Ontario. And we've got some sleet and hail this morning. The temperature is supposed to be above zero, but I got a feeling it's below zero. And I'm just getting suited up. So this is what it takes to get ready to go do some steelhead fishing. In just a few moments, we're going to go check the water conditions at this tributary, and then I'm going to hopefully get a couple steelhead and share some tips for you when it comes to hooks and stuff. I just hope that the sleet doesn't turn into rain, because then the tributary will get dirty. So first thing I got to do is get my waders on, so I don't get suited up, because it was about a couple hour drive to get to the location where I'm at. And the type of waders that I'm actually putting on this morning look more like jeans, which they're kind of neat. We're supposed to be getting winds up to about 70 kilometers an hour or stronger, so it's not going to be the nicest weather. And just as a tip for wading systems, because there's not a lot of rocks in this tributary, I'm actually putting boots on that don't have felt soles, because I find that if there's snow and ice, the felt will get stuck to it. And if it's mud, this kind of sole will give me a little bit more traction. I don't have any spikes on there. I don't believe in using spikes, because you can do damage if you're wading in the water. So I'm just going to get these on. And I'm not using chest waders. I've actually just got, you can say they're chest waders, but they're not your traditional ones that are like bibs that go right up. So one thing that I do, I'm trying to put my foot up here. It's kind of awkward with bulky waders on. One thing that I do is I do a couple of knots on my boots. So I do a normal, bow tie knot, and then a couple of half hitches, because I don't want these coming off. I'm going to be trucking through some bush to get some of my favorite spots. And one thing I got to stress with any waders, there's a reason why they give you these gravel guards. These are built into these waders. So I'm actually putting the gravel guard on. That's to keep gravel and debris from going inside and damaging the neoprene part. And then that's pulled down. So that's how I protect my feet. But like I say, these look like jeans. And you can see here, I'm going to put my hoodie up. They're kind of nice because I don't have shoulder straps. I can just zip them up like this. I've got a zipper here, so it's kind of like pants, but they're actually waders. And then I've got my belt. So this is a neoprene belt that also works as a belt to tighten things up in case you fall in. So they're kind of like pants. So I'll tell you, they're handy, especially if you have to go number one, so you can just undo the top. So I'm just going to do the second boot. I gotta make sure I don't have any debris just from standing on the ground. I picked a spot where it's grass, so not mud. I know at times when I've had to get suited up where it's been nasty, like mud and stuff, I'll bring a mat with me to get my stuff on so I don't get everything dirty on the inside. I do have double socks on. They're wool socks. So that's why it's taking me a little bit longer. If I can get this one up here. So this is where you're getting the whole thing here of what it takes to get suited up and everything. And I'll tell you what, it's not fun when it's cold like this morning. I'm using my bare hands. I got my gloves ready, but you start losing body heat real quick. So I know I'm going to warm up when I'm walking, but I'm getting all this done here. By the way, these are lightweight boots, because when you're walking through the bush, I've got, full neoprene waders that are for really cold weather wading, and it almost looks like the Ronald McDonald boots. They're really big because they've got air inside, like 1.5 inches, that are designed for like wading in January, February. You can tell I've been fishing the last couple of days. So you know what? I don't mind my stuff being dirty, because that's what it takes. And because it's going to be possible rain, I've got a nice short waterproof wading jacket on. Let me get this on me. going to keep the wind out. Not easy to do. You're probably not hearing the wind as strong as it is, but it's blowing pretty good. So one thing I suggest to people, if they're getting a jacket, don't get an overly long one, because if you're going to be wading in the water, you're probably going to get it wet. Boy, that's a cold wind, and that sleet. Here now my jacket really good. Starting to accumulate on my car windshield. Put this on. Everything is harder to do when it's cold out. Okay, so this could work as a vest too, because it's got lots of pockets. But you know what? I'm going to be putting my vest on top of that. So again, I've got a vest that's a short vest. It's got all my stuff in there, all my terminal tackle, floats, my row that I tied up last night. That is fresh. I'm being generous. That is fresh on this morning. There. So I'm just going to put my in here. So I've got my rod here. This is 13 foot. It's a 3-piece rod. So I'm just going to show you here. This is what it looks like broken down. So I've got it in 3 pieces because I'm going to be going through some bush. So I don't want it to get hung up on anything. And I'm almost ready to go. I'm going to show you the row that I tied up for today. So this is fresh steelhead eggs. We kept the female from yesterday. And this is what the eggs look like. You can see they're pretty bright. So I'm going to pull one out here. They're not small. So they're tied about nickel size because of the conditions. So I've got maybe about 30 sacks in here. So they're ready to go. And I've got them in a container that's pretty flat. So when I say flat, I don't like using a deep jar because I find that the bags will mush one another. So this thing is pretty thin. It's only about, actually I had my golf spikes in here for my golf shoes. So it's handy to have, and it screws on. So if there's any oil that comes out of the eggs, it's not going to get into my vest. Okay, let's head down to the river. Okay, I'm working my way down to the river, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the conditions here. And you know what? It actually looks almost perfect. I'm looking at the water. It's this color visibility looks to be about 4 to 6 inches. So I'm just going to work my way down. Just it's a little tricky because the surface of the mud is loose, but underneath it's frozen. So you got to be really careful when you're walking down. So I'm just going to go down, have a look. You can see the water conditions. The clarity is not bad. I mean, for steelheading, I think this is almost perfect here. So I'm just going to walk down a little bit. You know, when you get into some of this bush area, it can be a little snarly. So it's best to have lightweight boots on, and especially when you're going through areas that are muddy and stuff. There's not a lot of rocks. So I'm just going to take my time here, because it's going to get a lot thicker here with branches and everything. You can see why I packed my rod down, because when you get into, you know, climbing over stumps and stuff, it's best not to have your rod set up and everything, because it's harder to walk through. Tell you what, it's getting a little nippy out. This is good because I'm actually warming up a little bit. You can see why I got my rod broken down. So it's a little bit interesting walking here. So it's a little bit like adventuring, you know, and getting some fresh air. I don't hear a lot of birds out this morning. Usually there's ducks and geese this times of the year. But you know what? I love being out here, even though it's a little bit chilly out. Okay, let's get to the river. got my rod all set up. So I'm going to try my first drift. You know, I'm using really tiny hooks. I don't know if you can see how small this hook is. I'm just going to show you here. I think this is about a number 12 hook, and I'm going to talk about hooks and terminal tackle a little bit later. But I'm going to get rigged up with my first spawn sack right here. I was hoping to fish with some of my friends this morning, but they were busy. So I'm out here on my own. My hands are already getting cold. I'm just going to take sack here. I usually use the hook a little bit, the old one. Make sure that container is closed so I don't make a mess in there. In my vest. Even though I've got road juices and stuff on my vest. So let me just put, man, I can feel that wind howling. It's good that I'm down here. You know, most of the time when you're dealing with tributaries, whether it's here on the west coast, the water runs down in the valleys, so it's protected because we're out of the wind a little bit. So I'm just going to show you how I rig up my spawn sack. So there's my spawn sack right there. I like to kind of sew the hook on the outside of the spawn sack, but I want to make sure that the hook is exposed. So you can see here that the hook is smaller than the spawn sack. Okay, so there's my spawn sack. I leave a little bit of a head on the spawn sack where the material is cut off. Almost looks like a single leg. So I'm going to try a few drifts here, so bear with me here. Let's see if there's some fish in here. So my float went under, but that was bottom. So I'm using a slip bobber system. A lot of guys will use surgical tubing to secure their float to where they're fishing. So there's my bobber stop. I'm just going to slow it down a little bit, about 4 inches. So I've got only about a 3.5 foot lead. I like the idea of using a float slip bobber, because when I get a fish, when I set the hook, I get the direct line contact. I'm not pulling the float through the water. So a lot of times when your float goes under, it doesn't mean you have a fish. It could be the bottom. So I've readjusted. I'm going to go back out and try it again. Yay, success. It's raining pretty hard now. That was a job and a half, man. Look it. It's a nice steelhead. I'm going to handle it carefully. I'm going to let it go in a minute. Just goes to show you, you know, I made about 15, 20 drifts through that run, and I think this is a pretty fresh fish. So I'm just going to get the hook out and I'm going to release it back in the water. What a gorgeous, beautiful steelhead. Fresh run. Hook just in the roof of the mouth. See if I can pop that hook out. Tell you, it is tough when it's so cold out. My hands are frozen. Come on. Those little hooks really stick. So you gotta be really careful with it. Just there, okay. One more look before I release it. Isn't that a beautiful fish? That's what steelheading is all about. Hooked another beautiful rainbow. This is a big male, gorgeous fish, beautiful colored. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it in because it's so, I don't have a net, but I'm going to try. Got to be careful because the shoreline is frozen. Nice fish. Wait till you see this fish, how colorful he is. Just gotta watch my step here coming up. Cannot drop my rod in the water. Look at this, is a classic steelhead. I tell you, I'm exhausted. That was a big job. Look at gorgeous fish. Got some weeds there trying to land them. This is no easy task. I'm telling you, to try to get a fish like this in without a net, slippery shoreline, isn't that gorgeous? Look at, you can see the way he's taken that spawn sack just in the roof of the mouth. Man, the weather can be cold, but I love this fishing. It's awesome. Wow. Pretty exciting catching those two fish. You know, it stopped raining for a little bit, so I'm here in a kind of a protected part of the tributary. I've gone a little bit deeper into the forest here to get out of the wind because you know, I was having problems even trying to do stuff with my hands. It got so cold. But anyway, I'm just going to go over my gear a little bit and I'm going to give you a couple tips of my setup today. So I am using a Bear center pin. This is a Bear center pin. It's made in Canada. Very high quality. It's saltwater proof. I've used it all over pretty well North America, from the west coast of Canada, fishing for, you know, large salmon, coho, chinook, steelhead, and also down south fishing for saltwater fish. The one unique thing about the center pin is that if I click the lever off, you can see it's a center pin. It's very smooth, there's no resistance on it, so I can let my drift go at current speed. But if I click that lever over, it engages into a drag. So now I've got a drag system that goes up to about, I'm going to say 15 pounds of pressure. This is the drag knob right here. So you might want to say, well, if you're a classic center pin fisherman, why are you not using just a center pin with no drag? Well, when the weather gets cold, let me tell you, and I've got gloves on like I had to this morning, and it gets rain and wind and cold, it's nice to have a drag system because it's very hard to handle your fingers on the rim spool when it gets cold to try to control the drag. So to me, I really like having it, and especially when you're using it on a downrigger or using it for mooching, which this reel is so versatile, it's excellent to do that. So I'm running a main line that's a little bit heavier monofilament, and then what I've got is, I've got my spawn sack that you can see right here. So I'm ready to make another drift. And I've got a small, this is actually a number 12 hook. I'm gonna try to hold it up so you can see it. It's kind of reversed here. So let me see if you can see that hook. This is a number 12 steelhead hook right here. It's very small. And you can see I have it exposed. And this is just that netting that you buy for tying row bags. And I'm using some fresh steelhead eggs from a female that I kept yesterday. So my setup is, I've got a fluorocarbon leader. It's a lighter leader for about 14 to 16 inches. So the water's pretty dirty because we've had a lot of runoff from the spring. So I don't need a long leader. Then I have a very small swivel right here. And then I've got 3 small split shot, and then my float that's right here. So let me just hang this back up, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the terminal tackle, because I think it's really, really important to be set up properly. You know, when you're drift fishing like this or float fishing, you're constantly adjusting and the depth that you're fishing at. So what you need to have is a good assortment of weights. These weights are about 4 or 5 sizes, and it's a nice little carrying case. You know, you can buy these, they're about 14, 15 bucks, and you just turn the opening so you can get your split shots, and they won't fall out when you put them in your vest. So that's a really good thing to have. The other thing that I do is I don't take a lot of gear. You know, when I'm traveling through the bush, I try to go as light as possible. So you can see my amazing tackle box here. It's a Ziploc bag. So if I do drop this, it's going to float once I seal it. And inside I've got a selection of floats. So the one that I was using today is called the Drennan float, but there's different brands, you know, different companies that bring them in from Asia. So this is the float right here. This particular one, if I'm not mistaken, is the smallest one. It's about a 4 or 5 gram, somewhere in that range. And this one has neoprene surgical tubing to attach it. So this is a little tube that I've cut and I slipped it over there. So to attach this to your line, you would need to put the tubes on first and then slide your float inside the tube on your line. So this would be permanently attached to your line. You can still move it up and down the line, but I prefer to use a slip bobber system like I have on my float right here. So let me see if I can turn this around so you can see it. So there's my slip bobber. That's my bobber stop with the little bead right there. So I like the idea that when I set the hook, the line goes through the float as opposed to pulling it through the water. Okay, so because I'm fishing a smaller tributary, you can see all the floats are pretty small. They're pretty sensitive. So they're anywhere from 3 to about 5 grams of weight. Usually that's how floats are marked. Okay, so this is a 3.5. I'll just show you here. Okay, you can see that right there. It's probably backwards. This is a balsa wood float. So for hooks, inside my Ziploc, I have another Ziploc. That's where my hooks are. So I've got, these are some octopus hooks. These are a little bit larger. So if I'm running larger row bags that are bigger than a nickel size or dime size, then I'll go with a little bit of a larger hook. You can see here the nice circular shape of the hook. There's a couple on the back there. But in here I also have some number 12s. So there's a mix here of hooks in there. So I try to use good quality hooks because I appreciate hooks that won't break and that have a really sharp point. And then to connect my fluorocarbon leader to my main line, I use small swivels. So this is a little package of small swivels. So you know, when you're fishing for steelhead like this, you don't need a lot of tackle, but I'll tell you, one thing that's super important and it's a game changer. All the difference in the world is this. We call this gold right here. So you can use, you know, eggs that you buy. You can use artificial eggs, but if you get a fresh fish, a steelhead or a salmon in the fall, and you've got row bags that you can use. Here's a classic row bag right there. This is about a dime size one. You can see it's tied in a bright chartreuse netting. It makes all the difference in the world. So some of them here are tied in the netting material that you see here. I didn't trim that off. This is more of a natural yellow color. This is a bright color. I'm going to show you 2 sizes of eggs that I've got. I don't know if you can see them here. The one on my right is a little bit bigger. Oops, just dropped them here. The one on the left is a little bit, or now they're reversed. The one on the left is a little bit bigger. The one on the right a little bit smaller. So sometimes changing the size of your spawn sack makes a big difference. So having fresh roe, very, very important. And then the other one is the depth that you're drifting at. You know, when we're drift fishing like this and we're using a float, you're constantly fishing different water. You could be fishing a shallower, faster run, or you could be fishing a slower, deeper pool. And I find that the fish can be right on the bottom. Usually if it's faster run, the fish are closer to the bottom. If the water's murky, like it is today, you can see in the background there that it's kind of a chocolatey color. Visibility is about 10 inches, 12 inches. A lot of the times the fish will suspend off the bottom. So you're constantly messing around. So if you're dragging bottom, your float will go down, you know, and it'll go with the current because you're catching on stuff. So you want to be up off the bottom, anywhere from about 6 inches to a foot to start off with, and then experiment depending on the water depth. But I'll tell you, once you get onto this steelheading stuff, using roe bags, using floats, center pin reels, you'll probably be hooked for life.